Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are. My name is J.E. Marie and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Podcast. So, how y'all doing? Our topic for today is lenses. It's all about the perspective. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Lenses. The film that you see the world through. That is one's perspective. Your perspective, if truly dictating the very way you observe something, is influencing the way you think, speak, and act. Yes, we've been hammering in the idea and the notion that one's behavior has severe effects on one's experience by shaping them on the inside. Therefore, this person is in alignment to receive a correlating result from the world and throughout their life. That internal aspect is the programming, and it is this that frames the lenses, so to speak. In so many ways, the programming is the reason or the cause for the lens's existence. It is when we are made aware, through the presence of mind, of these lenses through observation over time that we have built the skill of seeing past them by responding to the thing that truly matters, not the preconceived notions of what we believe to be true. This is key. Being aware of your perspective and the way it may shape how you view things and the way that you express out into your external reality. I'm gonna work on my handwriting. So, perspective. So like I said, we've been hammering in the ideas of programming and how basically the way you're programmed basically shapes the world that you experience. And it's through your perspective. Now let's get into some definitions so we can kind of have a firm idea of what we're talking about. In psychology, the focus is on observing behaviors with a specific approach. So the simplypsychology.com definition of perspective is a particular theoretical framework or approach that involves certain assumptions about human behavior. I'm going to say that again. Maybe I shouldn't say it again. A particular theoretical framework or approach that involves certain assumptions about human behavior. Now, this thing that we all have called a perspective is almost a built-in bias about the world. It's the assumptions and expectations that we use as a reason as to why we behave the way that we do. Perspectives, therefore, can be changed. You know what I mean? To get a better grasp on this, let's talk about the flow of awareness. The way you are programmed dictates the way you perceive, which literally guides where you place your focus. The things you are aware of, or how you view them, shape the literal experience that you are having in any given moment. So, keep this in mind. The lens you see the world through is what you see the world as. One more time for the people in the back. The lens you see the world through is what you see the world as. So now that we know that we all have this internal bias, it is our own, now that we have this knowledge of it, it is our own responsibility to be accountable and responsible for them. When we impose our own expectations based on these perspectives on the outside world, we not only set ourselves up for failure because something didn't happen that we expected to happen, it's also, we're not allowing any of the secondary characters in our story or in our world the grace to be the primary characters in their own because of these expectations that we impose on them. The way, being that the lens we see the world through creates our own internal reality, it would be best that the lens you use keeps you whole and healthy, at the very minimum, if not thriving. So we need to be able to give ourselves as much grace, if not more, than we intend to give anyone else. Now let's talk about this. even when you aren't performing at 100%, it's best to think about it objectively instead of going it into a self-deprecating mode where you actually are not being helpful to yourself. So what I would recommend is acknowledge the situation for what it is and make a plan to do better and be committed to follow through on said plan. So also, the next thing, another why we need to be aware. Live your best life, but we all need room for improvement. So why am I saying this? So it's very key to growth that the person receiving any form of criticism takes it calmly and objectively, i.e., enough said. One reason. If it is constructive, it is highly beneficial. A lot of us don't want to admit that. If the criticism is constructive, it is beneficial to us. And the second reason, on the flip side, if it is not constructive, or even if it's downright insulting, release it as not yours because it is not your bias. I know that one's kind of hard for some people, but in doing this, you are not identifying. If you react to that situation, you are then identifying with that said situation. Yes, when you react and you identify with the situation, you are more prone to create more situations like that in your life. And so instead of doing that, what you want to do is respond effectively, let it go, and walk away. Especially, and this is in the case that it's not constructive. If there's even a response to be given, sometimes some people don't some people do not deserve a response or reaction from you. That is fact. I am a firm believer in that. So it's very much a nuance, but you need to have the discernment to know what battles to face, basically. Now, some tips for y'all. Awareness is key. So how do we build this awareness about our perspective that we have developed through the programming that we have throughout our lives? Stalk your thoughts. This is a tip that I used from The Four Agreements, Don Luis, love the book, and he says that you should stalk your thoughts because that is how you start to notice your own behaviors and your own reactions to certain things. So, stalk your thoughts. Be patient with yourself. Take time to ask yourself why you are reacting the way you do. So not only stalk, but you also need to do the backhand work. Okay, I see that this is happening. Let's go ahead and dig a little deeper. Notice the trends, awareness, and another thing is mantras. I'll get into that in the story later. And visualize how you want to exist in life. Yeah, visualize how you want to exist in life. And in the case where we're talking about reframing our perspective from our old programming, rewrite the story. And when I say rewrite the story, sometimes we remember things in a certain way that is so harmful to us that it's detrimental. It's very detrimental. I can't beat around the bush. Now, I'm not saying lie to yourself. Tell yourself that everything was great and perfect. That is not what I'm saying at all. However, again, this is where it's best to be objective. And again, that is something that I will get into in the story that I'm going to tell. But for this section, that is all, and I wish you all the best. Let's go ahead and travel back into the past. Travel back with me. Throughout my life, I really believe that you get what you give, right? You get what you give. Now, I'm just going to be honest. I wasn't perfect. I had a lot of issues. I was one of those kids who was bullied, so I bullied others. And that was not okay. That's not okay. But in my mind at the time, it was a righteous is the only other word I could use, being a child, but at the time it made sense. It made sense. This is the way to be, because this is what I know. Yeah, I know what it's like for someone to try to take my power away. I understand what that is. And I know what it's like for someone to try to make me feel less than. I know what that's like. And at the same time, I know what it's like for that same person to try and make me believe I'm experiencing this thing because that is, in a way, I deserved it. In some way, shape, or form, I'm experiencing this thing because I deserved it. I'm bullying you because you did this thing or because you exist in this way. And I'm not going to get into details, but I feel like a good portion of my experiences were that. And so I really did, how do I say this? I believed that if someone was a bad person to you and then you started doing bad things, you were not a bad person. However, that's not true. That's blatantly not true. Again, I was a child. But yeah, like that was just the way. That was just the way to me. And it was a situation where I truly believed that, again, what you give out is what you receive. So I was kind to the people who were mean to me, and I was mean to the people who were kind to me. Because that, for some reason, somehow, through the treatment that I had received, that was the switch that was flipped in my brain. And it was sometime in middle school where we moved, and I remember thinking, okay, I don't want to be that girl anymore. I don't want to have to experience what it's like to see someone's face when I make them feel bad. I don't like that feeling, and I don't want someone to treat me like that. Now, it's really interesting because it took me a while to really harness the idea that how do I say this? You want people to treat you how they would like to be treated. But the world is full of hurt people. The world is full of hurt people. So as much as I would want to love on the world, there were so many times that after the fact that I decided to change, that love was not reciprocated, whether that be family, friends, whatever. And I really internalized that. I internalized that for a long time. And I thought it was karma, which it very well could have been. I thought it was karma. I thought I was a bad person. I thought there was something wrong with me. But then I realized that I wanted to be a new person, but all the examples around me were of the old version of me. Everything was reminding me of the programming that I had been trying to relinquish, again, in my 8th grade, that I had been trying to relinquish, and it was so difficult. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s where it finally clicked one day that I was not that same person I was 10 years before, 10 years before. And it was because I had experienced something else. Now, the thing is, I had to experience something else so that I could look back on my life and say, hey, that's what happened. This is what happened. That's what happened. But while I was in it, it was so hard to see through what was actually happening around the time. So I had to shift my perspective in order to actually change. Me wanting to be different wasn't enough. I had to find other examples of who I wanted to be. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I read some books. I went out into the world, which I felt like I wasn't allowed to do when I was a child. I didn't have much experience outside of my family. And once I was able to do that, it changed my world. And I definitely had a huge culture shock. I had a few breakdowns. It was intense. It was really, really intense. But it was intense for the better, because through these new experiences, I was able to stop my thoughts, and I was able to ask myself the questions of, why do I react this way when someone says this when all they have is good intent? you know? And then you start to realize, I am internalizing other people's treatment of me. And that's when it finally clicked. I don't have to be that person. And I don't have to fake being somebody else. Because the reality is that I chose to identify with things that were not mine in the first place. And so with trying to relinquish all of these old ideas, it was very difficult. But once I did that, the main problem was I didn't know what to fill it with. I had an idea of who I thought I wanted to be, but once I realized everything I wasn't, I didn't even know who I wanted to be anymore. And so that's why it's really important to not only rewrite the story of the past and think objectively about it, but visualize your future. What do you want your life to look like? Because when you have that end goal in mind, you know what you are working towards. Yeah. And it took me a while to learn that, but I was able to do so. And with holding that image of this woman who is kind and steadfast and successful and loving, someone who's self-respecting. That was one of my main things. Someone who was self-respecting, yet not a people pleaser. That was one of my struggles, because again, once I realized, again, in middle school that I didn't want to be a bully, I went into the opposite extreme. I started I wanted everyone to be my friend. I wanted everyone to like me, everyone to love me, and that wasn't the answer either. So, again, you want to start. Actually, let me say this. It's okay if you don't start with an end goal in mind, but it definitely helps when you have that vision of what you want to achieve and what you would like yourself to look like. Otherwise, though, stalk your thoughts and be patient. Be patient. I had to be patient because it's been a 10, 12, 17-year process. How old am I? It's been a while of me trying to work on myself and figure out, quote unquote, what's wrong with me. And really, it's not about what's wrong, but it's about what do you want? Who do you want to be? So, going back to what I said in the beginning, I used to believe that you are treated how you treat people. But in the reality, I also believe, at the same time, because I believe it's a balance of it, you are treated the way you deserve, the way you think you deserve to be treated. Because in the case that we expect a certain treatment, we will make space for that treatment. If we do not expect it, we will hold a boundary for said treatment. And that's it. So I had to decide, what do I deserve? What do I want? And how do I get that? So thank you again for joining me for another soul episode. And again, I am taking stories and I would love to hear yours. Go ahead and send me an email, and with your consent, I would love to share it. So thanks for joining me for another Soul, aka SOL, aka Student of Life podcast episode. I wish you all the best on your SOL journey. Bye guys.